Have you ever felt like your relationship was getting cold? Like there's a kind of a chill in the air? You reach out to your partner only to get frostbite? Well, what if I told you that there's a secret to warming up your marriage that is not about fixing every flaw or pointing out every flaw? So, today we're going to dive into how to warm up your relationship and create a much more loving environment, how you can reignite the warmth in your relationship. So, no matter how cold it might feel right now, stick around. You don't want to miss this. Welcome back to the video. My name is Tom, and today we're going to talk about warming up your marriage. So what if you lived up north in the freezing cold and, the wind is howling outside and it's bitter and your windows are shut and your doors are shut, yet the cold just seems to continue to seep in through every crack or crevice in your house. Now, you could spend all day and maybe longer trying to go around your house and patch up every little crack to try to keep your house warm. And that would work. It would just take a lot of time and a lot of effort, and you'd probably just get very frustrated. But there's a lot easier method to warming up your house, and that is just go over to the thermostat and turn the thermostat up, warm the house up. Or if you have a fireplace, roll some logs into the fireplace and start a fire, and immediately your house will get warmer. And as your house gets warmer, you can begin to relax because everything just starts to feel better. You start to feel a lot more comfortable. Well, now take that illustration and apply it to your marriage. When your marriage is getting cold, when you're not getting along very well and everybody's got short tempers or you've kind of gone off to your own corners, you could try to fix things in your marriage by looking and examining and searching for every flaw and then spending a lot of time addressing every concern and every flaw or every mistake that you don't like. Or you could focus on trying to warm the marriage up by showing more attention, more affection, better conversations, and generally speaking, trying to show more love. And it's 100% guaranteed that this is going to be a better way to try to warm up your marriage than pointing out every flaw. Okay, so the first thing we've got to do to warm up this marriage, to warm up this relationship, is we have to shift our focus. You have to mentally shift your focus. Just like in the metaphor of heating up your home, the first step to turning up the heat in your relationship is to begin to shift your focus. Instead of continually zeroing in and focusing your attention on what's wrong and what your partner's doing that frustrates you, we have to start focusing on what is right in the relationship. Chances are that in your marriage, 20% of the stuff is bothering you, but 80% of your relationship is really good, or 80%, maybe 70, whatever. But there's got to be a percentage in this relationship that you do appreciate. You may have lost touch with that because you're not focusing on that anymore. And the way to begin to shift that focus is sort of the first thing we got to do is we got to decide to become more kind and more generous. Now, I'm not saying if somebody's being awful to you and treating you abusively, but in a typical relationship, becoming more kind and more generous. It sounds simple, but the simple acts of kindness can work wonders in a marriage. It's really hard to resist someone who's giving you positive attention, positive affection, and it's hard to not reciprocate that. When somebody's being loving and warm and gracious and affectionate, it changes the whole marriage. It changes the whole dynamic. When you're generous with your love and your attention and your appreciation, it becomes contagious. It's really hard for your partner to not respond positively when they truly feel appreciated. Or let me say it this way. It's really hard to resist someone who's loving you in a way that feels meaningful to you. But the opposite is true too. It's hard to respond with love when you don't feel loved in a meaningful way. So, what if you could focus your attention, which you can, on being more kind, more generous, more appreciative, and more generally more loving in your relationship? And the second part of that is learning to drop the criticism and the harsh judgments, the disrespectful judgments, the harsh comments. Criticism and judgments in a marriage is like a cold draft that just chills the relationship. They seep into everything and it just contaminates everything. I know that in your mind you feel like if I could point out what they're doing wrong or I could point out what I don't like, then it could correct things and make it better. And maybe that's true sometimes, but when your relationship is in the ER, when it's in a desperate state, more criticism and judgments are probably not going to help that marriage get warmer and more loving. It's probably just going to choke out whatever life is left. And I don't want that for you. Choosing to let go of these negative habits of always pointing out what's wrong or what you don't like, you're effectively closing the cracks and keeping the warmth where it belongs in the marriage. So becoming more kind and generous and dropping the criticisms and judgments is a great way for us to begin to shift our focus to what's good in the relationship and nurturing that rather than continually pointing out what we don't like. Okay, now this next one, number 2, it's going to be hard. Some of you guys, it's going to be so hard, but it doesn't have to be. You just have to make the decision to try it. Okay, the second one, or the second step, is the importance of small, meaningful gestures. Small, meaningful gestures. Let's talk about these. Everyday actions that turn up the heat in the relationship. So, for example, maybe using eye contact when we talk. Actually listening, looking in your partner's eyes and listening to what they're saying without trying to just side rail the conversation so that we can be done and get back to my TV show or back to my scrolling. No, thinking about what is my wife or what is my husband, what do they need me to, how do they need me to show up in this conversation so that they feel like this conversation was a pleasant experience. So I'm actually listening, I'm actually interacting, and I'm being non-judgmental in this conversation. I don't want to argue. I don't want to fight. I don't want to complain anymore. I want them to feel loved. I want them to feel cared about. So I'm going to be very active in my listening. And yeah, there's probably going to be some darts or arrows or some, zingers that are going to hit me that I'm not going to like, but I can't give a lot of attention to that right now because I have a mission. My mission is to try to save this marriage or save this relationship, and focusing on everything that they say that feels frustrating to me and defending myself is not a good strategy for trying to heal this relationship and make it more loving. Show that my partner that everything they say to me right now, everything they say to me is important, and I'm fully present in the conversation and fully present in the moment. And maybe another small gesture that could make a huge difference is choosing kindness over being right. I know in your own head you're right a lot of the time. And this is kind of what fuels arguments in relationships is I feel like I'm right and she feels like she's right and both of us are right, but our relationship is not right. And when my focus can be shifted off of me being right and proving myself right and instead focus on trying to make the relationship right, I'm going to start choosing kindness and acceptance and forgiveness and love over the priority of being right and defending myself. So, what if instead of being right, you choose to be kind? I know it can be really hard. It can be really difficult because when you're right, you want to argue your case, but arguing is probably not going to lead to your goal here. Let's think like, what is our goal right now? My goal is to try to warm this relationship up, save our relationship, and make it a more comfortable and loving environment to live in. So, what if you could let go of needing to prove yourself right in every argument and focused on what really matters right now, which is being loving and supportive, it would make a huge difference in warming up your relationship. Okay, and the third thing I want to bring up is the effect that happens in your marriage when you can begin to warm up the relationship. The effect is people will start to become more open and more honest and more genuine and authentic. When you know you're loved, when you know that you're cared about, it's much easier for you to begin to open up. Think about it like this. When everything you do and say is criticized, when everything you do and say hurts everybody's feelings, you're going to become very guarded. You're going to become very guarded and very self-protective, and you're going to walk on eggshells, and you're not really going to open up anymore because it's not a safe relationship for you to be yourself. And that is a real danger in a relationship. When you don't feel safe to be yourself, you got to pretend to be somebody you're not. And pretending is never the way to really make this relationship intimate. So when you can warm up the marriage or warm up the relationship by focusing on what's right, by being more loving, by giving more positive attention, and focusing on being kind, one of the effects that happens is your partner begins to feel more secure and more safe and can genuinely open up. And when that happens, when the closed spirits begin to open up, everything becomes softer, more warm, and more loving. And guess what? You become friends again. You become friends again. And wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't that be wonderful? You know, if you guys were really friends again, then all talk of separating and all talk of divorce would just go away naturally. You wouldn't have to be talked in to staying with this person. You would want to stay with them because you love each other and because you're friends again. So what are we talking about in this video? Well, what we're saying is when you can focus on showing up to your relationship in a more loving, attentive, affectionate, conversational, communicative way, when you can drop some of the judgments and some of the criticisms. Look, you're always going to have things that bother you, always, okay? But you can't focus on those right now. We have got to focus on creating a more loving. Now, part of what will happen is as the relationship becomes safer and more loving and more intimate later on, when things begin to heal, we can then address some of these problems. But right now, when your marriage is in trouble, right now when you're in the ER, you've got to focus on being positive, loving, gracious, generous, and forgiving. When you do that, you're healing. You're healing your marriage. You're healing your relationship. Later on, we can go to the gym and we can work out and make it better. But right now, we need to focus on healing. And healing happens when we forgive, when we love, when we show grace, when we show kindness. And I know this is really hard when you don't feel it. You don't feel like it. You feel drained, apathetic. You have like very low bandwidth right now and very little reserves. I know. But somebody's got to transform this marriage, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about transformation, and we're talking about relationship transformation, and it's got to start with one of you. It's got to start with one of you, and you're the one watching this video, so that indicates that you're the one that's leaning in and wanting to make things better. So if this is going to happen, it's going to happen because you start to make these changes. You feel this burden, you feel this responsibility. And look, you're not alone in this. There are people that you can reach out to. There's friends, family maybe in your life, maybe a church family. There's somebody, a counselor, a therapist, a pastor. So the next time you find yourself frustrated in your relationship, rather than focusing on everything that's wrong or everything that irritates you, instead of focusing on fixing every problem, ask yourself, what can I do right now to help my partner feel more loved? What can I do to warm up this connection or this relationship? How can I bring more love, more kindness, and more warmth into this relationship. You'll be amazed at how quickly things can begin to change, how the atmosphere and environment of your relationship can change when instead of focusing on fixing every flaw, you focus on fueling the warmth in your relationship. Remember that the most powerful changes sometimes come from the simplest actions. And so let's turn up the heat in our relationship and watch how things change. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope it helps. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and reach out if I can help in any way. As always, be present to life. I'll see you next time.